to the BuiltOnAir podcast, the variety show for all things Airtable. Each episode, we cover 4 different segments. It's always fresh and different and lots of fun while you get the insider info on all things Airtable. Our hosts and guests are some of the most senior experts in the Airtable community. Join us live each week on our YouTube channel every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern and join our active community at BuiltOnAir.com/join. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor, OnToAir.com. Any business running on Airtable gets the value that Airtable has, but also needs a few more functions to complete their operations. That's where OnToAir comes in. It's a suite of tools for any business running on Airtable to maximize your operations efficiencies and automations. One customer, John, states that OnToAir enables his business to function properly without having to think about building their own software, and that is pretty invaluable. The OnToAir Airtable apps are amazing, and we use them often and are very happy with the results. So join John and hundreds more customers and take your Airtable to the next level with OnToAir. Sign up today with promo code BuiltOnAir for a 10% discount. Check them out at OnToAir.com. And now let's check out today's episode and see what we built on air. Welcome back to the BuiltOnAir podcast. We are now in episode 2 of season 14. Good to be with you. Myself, Dan Fellers, and we have Camille with us after a week off. Welcome back, Camille.
Hello.
Good to have you as always. Ali is off this week, and we should be joined shortly by our special guest, Jason, hoping that he comes on to join us. But we're going to get started, and if he doesn't join us, we'll call in audible. So welcome to the BuiltOnAir podcast. Every week we go through 4 different segments, talk about what's going on. I'll walk you through what we're going to be doing today. We always start with our round the bases to get you caught up on what's going on in the Airtable world and all the different communities and make sure that you know the latest and greatest and all the news. Then we'll do a spotlight on Ontoair, our primary sponsor, get you up to date on that product. And then assuming Jason joins us, we'll learn about him and his story and how he found Airtable. Then he will hopefully be walking through some bases that he uses in his daily business. And then we'll do a quick shout out to our community, how you can join and participate. And then Camille will walk us through some scripting, how to do date-based change logs. So we'll assume that's the show. After we get through our roundup, if Jason still hasn't showed us, we'll get him on in a future episode. And we'll go to Camille, and then we'll do a couple other fun activities to make sure that you are learning this hour. So round the bases. It was a relatively quiet week this week. Not a whole lot going on. Couple PSA announcements. Airtable is going to have some outages with the database. Let's see, April 28th. That's still next week. So that's coming up. They've actually had a couple outages. They've been doing this, and I haven't noticed it. Last time I was on, and I didn't get any errors or anything, and so it was a very minor downtime. So they're getting better at their outages, hopefully. When was the last unannounced outage?
Unannounced outage? I think about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, or something like that.
Yeah. So here's an announced outage. So they're getting better at least at announcing when they know it will be down. So keep that on your radar. They do it Friday evenings at night, so shouldn't impact too many people. The other PSA coming from Chris Dancy and Ben Green, who run the Airtable community in Facebook, are announcing Daretable. So 30-ish days left, actually less than 30. A month from today is actually when it is, May 18th. So it's in San Francisco. It'll be at the headquarters of Airtable. So we'll see what life is like at Airtable. Myself, Camille will be there. Ali will be there. Kavan, friend of the show, will be there. She got the spotlight in this one on formulas you didn't know you need. So she'll be doing a show. Camille, you'll be doing a segment. What's your topic?
The title is called Your Wish is My Command Line. And what I'm hoping to get out of that session is to sort of explain that a lot of what you can do in Airtable, there's different tiers. There's stuff that's, baked right in. It's a feature of Airtable. There's stuff that you got to do, maybe a formula, maybe an automation to do, and there's some things that you need to go outside of Airtable to fully accomplish what it is you're looking for. And the purpose of that session is more hoping to be a little bit interactive, where people can say, I have this problem, how might I solve it? And then if I can do it on stage, I will. And if I can't, then just good advice of what I've seen and what I think might work for the problem as described to me. So obviously I'm not going to be able to go deep into everybody's use cases, but some quick advice for how might you do a couple of different things in your table, because you can do a lot.
Nice. And we have Jason with us. Welcome, Jason.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Sorry, I'm a few minutes behind.
No worries. We're glad to have you. We're going through our roundup and keeping people up to date with what's going on in the community. And we'll get to hear Jason's story in a bit. So glad to have you. Feel free to chime in. Are you planning to go to Airtable conference? That's what we're talking about.
I didn't even know it was happening. So that's news to me. Is it a virtual or in person?
So this is in person in San Francisco at Airtable's headquarters a month from today. And
okay.
Not sure how many tickets are left, but Airtable.com.
Okay, yeah, I'll check it out. I guess I missed the announcement.
Yeah. So we're getting the word out, and some friends of the show help run it. Chris and Ben have both been on the show in the past, and
okay, cool.
And they put on a great show. They did this is their second year doing this. So last year was in Austin, and this year it's actually at Airtable's headquarters. So we'll have good participation from Airtable, and so we'll be there. And get the word out. I think it was a pretty tight, I think only like 75 spots, just because of the location, couldn't handle a lot. So it's going to be a pretty small group. But should be fun.
Cool.
Awesome. All right. That's the PSA announcements. Then a couple other things. This came from the BuiltOnAir community. Hannah, who is involved with BuiltOnAir, noticed this link to support. So we've talked about, so this is a two-way sync overview. So we've talked about this in the past. It's been in beta at the enterprise level. I believe you have to be an enterprise account to get access to this beta. But I know I've seen it, I've played with it, and it's out there. So, but I don't know. So this update, or I guess this article is relatively new. Maybe this has been around. I don't think they've publicly shared information about this beta, but now there's more information about it. So worth pointing out. The thing that jumped out to me is I knew about this, but I didn't know about all the limitations. Click down here on this limitations. There's actually quite a few limitations that I didn't realize. I don't know. Camille, are you using this at all?
The first true test of me being on a podcast and also being a member of an enterprise.
I'm not going to say in what company or.
Well, I could say I work at Apple now. It's an interesting series of events have led me here. We are an enterprise client of Airtable, and we've interacted with the two-way syncing beta. And there's none of my projects use the two-way sync. I could see it being extraordinarily useful in a lot of different use cases, but there are, as this page points out, a lot of different ways in that there's some things that you might expect to be there and they're not. One of them that makes sense to me is formulas quite work because they're, if you're not syncing in all of the data that the formula relies on, then the logic of it would break. That kind of makes sense, but also like, can you just import the value as a text field? Like, maybe there's a warning symbol that says it's not always up to date, or there's a couple of different things that, are, I understand why, but also, isn't there another way? That's kind of how I feel for a lot of the things that we see on this bulleted list.
Yeah. And it could be just in phases, for this phase.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with that because of the complexity that it introduces and
sure.
may come down the road. But yeah.
It's just, there's things like the first one, I don't know why it's listed in this order, but the first one is two-way syncs aren't available in Gantt views. And like, I get it, because Gantt views are the ones that have very specific linking relationships of the records that are being shown. I get it. That's somewhat complex to do for, a two-way synced item, but it is like, it works in all views except for Gantt.
Yeah.
Like, it feels a little odd.
Yeah. There must be something under the hood in the code of the Gantt view. Mm-hmm. And then the one I thought was interesting is that you can't use automations to update the destination. That one is confusing to me. Or API calls. So you basically, you can't modify it. So that's a big limitation that is really going to hamper what you can do with the two-way sync and using the destination table.
Or the mobile app. Why the mobile app?
Yeah.
What there? I can I can think of maybe they're trying to get around people circumventing certain Airtable limitations by having two-way syncs into various different bases. You're splitting apart the total, number of records that you could fit in one base, technically speaking, blah, 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 blah. That I can kind of understand, but like the mobile app is like, that's your product. Yeah.
Hopefully that's a future addition. What else in here? So basically the general concept, if you're not familiar with it, right now in production, you can do a one-way sync from a source to a destination, but in the destination, all those fields can't be modified. They're read-only. And so if you needed to change that, you'd have to go back to the source. Now you can, to a limited extent, modify changes in the destination and do that. So, but there are these limitations. Yeah. Automation. So that means there's going to be, I'm just thinking about implementing this. You're going to be talking back to the source base through an API call or a webhook or something to update the source from the destination, some hack like that to get that to work, which will be frustrating. But yeah, this, and then, hopefully at some point they said when they announced, I'm thinking of the new feature, the data source, the one, what are those called? The, like the universal tables that they announced.
Verified data source?
Something verified data source, yeah. Yeah, so when that comes out, that will probably reduce the need for two-way syncing, because a lot of things might make better sense to put into one of those verified data sources and not sync them between tables. So we'll see. All right, good stuff there. Next one. This is coming from the new table forums. Check out, join table forums if you haven't already. Great interactions going on there. Lots of experts that are answering questions. This one I answered, so I thought it would be worth showing on here since I'm a little familiar with it. This comes from Brandon, who's actually a friend of mine, and doing some Airtable stuff. So talking about, so this is dealing with webhooks, which is fairly common. If you want to send data from one system to another, webhooks is a very generic way, universally supported across lots of different platforms and systems. So it's essentially you define a URL and then you send data to that URL. And then on the other end, it will receive that data. So it's a way to message between systems. And so Scott had a post here that he linked to with an example of how to, this is a pretty good detail of how to send to a webhook, such as Make. It could be Zapier. It could be any other system. This one is, again, a little bit technical, but in the internet world, the defined protocol that you send data between, basically when a browser hits a website, it's doing what's called a GET request, and the server is responding in that. There's different types of requests. So this one is the standard GET request that is kind of how browsers work by default. What Brandon is asking for is a post request. So there's a GET and a post. The main difference is in a post, you can actually send like a body of data with the message into the server. So most APIs, you're sending a GET. Usually if you're querying for data, that's a GET request. If you're sending data, that's a post or a put. Those are the two different types. So that's kind of, high level of how APIs work. And so that example didn't quite work for Brandon's scenario. So I just replied with a small snippet of code. And this is how you would send a post request. So that right there is the method of the fetch. So you're fetching data, but you're sending it as a post, and you're wrapping it in this body. And you also have to have this header in here to tell it that it's JSON, which is what this body gets converted into.
Yeah, they always want to use my name.
That's right. You're famous. Yep, JSON.
I'm just now realizing why I never liked the function name fetch. It's because you can post with it as well, and that's just confusing.
Because you still are fetching data. You're fetching a response, so you still get a response back.
Yeah, but am I? I don't want a response. Just take the data.
Yeah, this one I actually didn't even do anything with the response. You could store the response in a variable.
That's the thing. A lot of times, and it's poor coding structure because you want to catch a response in case there's an error and you want to know. But sometimes I'm just sending stuff away, and I don't want anything to do with what gets returned to me.
Yeah. So this is the code. If you're in an automation and you need to send a message to a webhook somewhere, it does require a little bit of code. They don't have a built-in, automation task. Like Zapier and Make have, a task that's like an HTTP request is probably what it's called.
I will throw out there. Someone needed a JavaScript written the other day, and I didn't know how to do it. So I just used ChatGPT and said, "Hey, could you write me this script?" And then it gave me what I needed. So if there's Airtablers out there that don't know how to script, you can use a tool like that. So
yeah, that would be a good test to see if ChatGPT could answer this one. Probably could. There would be some nuances. So we've talked in the past about, so this would likely work inside of an automation script because those run server side. If you were to put this inside of a scripting extension, it may not work. It depends on the webhook that you're sending to. You might have to, they implemented a fetch remote. What's the name? Fetch remote.
That's it. Async, I think.
Fetch remote async, which is Airtable specific. That's not, fetch is a JavaScript specific function, that fetch remote async is Airtable specific. And so there's nuances like that I doubt ChatGPT would be smart enough to know. Maybe it does know.
Maybe you could feed it if you knew that the nuances ahead of time.
Yeah.
Or just update it. So
yeah, that's common. We're talking, we talk quite a bit. We actually have, I think, 2 shows coming up this season on ChatGPT and using it with Airtable. So we might showcase some of that.
Yeah, that definitely a lot of opportunities there.
Yeah.
And the flexibility of Airtable and all the integrations just makes the sky the limit for what you want to do.
Yep. Very true. So yeah, that's kind of the world of Airtable this week. Relatively quiet. I don't think there's any product releases, any feature updates that I'm aware of. So that means maybe today, maybe this afternoon. So usually it's like during the show they'll put out some stuff. So we might get some new stuff.
I believe I've made suggestions before that they just make feature release or announcements on like the Thursday of the week, because it's our show. It used to be Aaron Kornfeld's show, and then it was Chris Dancy and Ben Green's show on that Facebook. Yeah, and each was on a different day: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I was like, just do it on Thursday when we're all done, so that we're not. Who knows if they actually listened.
Yep. So we'll see. Maybe next week we've got some good stuff to talk about. So with that, we'll move on to OntoAir, our primary sponsor. It's an all-in-one toolkit to run your business on Airtable. If your business relies on Airtable, you definitely need to check out OntoAir. I was hoping to make one announcement today, but I think I'll save it for next week. So today I'm just going to give a shout out to our backups product. This is, really important. If you've got your important data in Airtable, best practice is to make sure you've got a copy of that somewhere outside of Airtable. That's where OntoAir Backups comes in. It helps you to back up your data and store it in your own repository, either in Google Drive, Box, or Dropbox are the ones we support. Somebody asked me this week about backups. If we're storing the data, we do not store your data. We act as a proxy to move it from Airtable to your destination. So we do have, obviously access to read from your Airtable and push to your destination, but we don't store, other than meta information, we do store some meta information. And it does pass through our servers from one to the other, but there's no long-term storage of your record data or your attachment data. So trying to do best practices on security there. And just kind of a quick showcase of what it looks like. You create a project, and a project can have multiple bases. We do have an app in the marketplace, but if you have lots of bases, it might be easier just to go to the website and just add them all at once. So you don't have to go and install the extension in every base that you want to back up. You can do it all in one place here and add them all at the same time now. And then it gives you a little bit of showcase of how many records are in each base, how many attachments are in each base. And you can actually drill down into those and see, even at the table level, how many records in each table and attachments in each table. And then if you go back, this is showing you every time it performs a backup, you'll see that it was completed, how many tables, and the total number of records and attachments that have been backed up. So great information. We do have some exciting features that will be coming out this year to enhance the backup experience, but definitely worth checking out to get your data backed up and in a secure place outside of Airtable. All right. With that, Jason, good to have you on the show. Second time. You were one of our...
Yeah, one of the earlier guests.
You were an early guest on our old format where we spent an hour drilling you and learning all about you.
Yeah.
But that was a long time ago. So we want an update. Give us the background. Give us your story. I'd love to learn more about you. And then also your story of how you came into Airtable, how you found it, and what it's done for you.
Yeah. So I am a full-time freelancer. I think of myself as a sales and influence amplifier. So I take and really focused around content marketing. So companies that have archives, let's say they've got an archive of several hundred blog posts, and it's kind of sitting there collecting dust, and they're wondering, hey, should I have spent all that time creating that content? I'm the guy that comes in and says, here's how, from an SEO standpoint, from an email nurturing standpoint, how do we take that? And so I've been freelancing since 2014. I owned a marketing agency for about 7 years before that, and I made a transition. But when I had one of the kind of the connections to Airtable is when I had my agency, I learned about a lot of and created some ideas and frameworks and systems to really how to operate the business. And those are a lot of the things I took with me into freelancing. I took those business lessons and I applied them. They were hard-earned lessons because running a business is no easy matter. But one of the things I was able to excel at freelancing was because I operated with a business mindset. And I think a lot of freelancers struggle with that. They are more of the technical person. They're doing the work, but they're not necessarily thinking of the work that they're doing as a business. And when you're an employee, you don't have to, but when you're a freelancer, you have to do that. So that was something that was really impactful. Well, a lot of those systems and frameworks, we didn't necessarily have any tools that really allowed us to manage those things. So we used spreadsheets a lot of times. And so I ended up, when I started freelancing, I built in a spreadsheet, I built like a freelancing dashboard. And that allowed me to manage, my clients and how much work I had and how much I could expect and all of these different factors. So I knew I was on track from the sales and marketing side, but also from delivering for my clients. And so I had this spreadsheet dashboard, and then a friend of mine, he stumbled upon Airtable. I mean, this would have been almost 10 years ago, maybe 2015 or 16, maybe. And so I had this dashboard, and he told me about Airtable, and I was like, wow, this is perfect, because the limitations of a spreadsheet, Airtable kind of took that and allowed me to go much further with it. And you had the database kind of approach, and so I moved my dashboard over and just made my life much easier to manage. And I was able to sort of discard the spreadsheet. Now, funny recent story is in that transition process, I brought most things over, but as my freelancing has evolved, there's some systems that I used to have on the spreadsheet that I'd forgotten that I didn't move over. And I've recently implemented a new system to kind of measure that in Airtable. So I went back to the spreadsheet a couple months ago to discover that thing. I was like, I used to be really good about this particular thing, and I can even dive into that in the template that I use if you want to do that. So I recreated it, and I actually made a much better version of it. So that's it in a nutshell. I wrote 2 books, one on freelancing that I published in 2017, and another for small business owners in 2019. You can see on this side the orange book here. Yep. And then this is Path of the Freelancer over here. So what else you want to know about my story?
Looks like you're a Star Wars fan as well.
I am, yes, big Star Wars fan, and grew up with it. Camped out. I don't know why. For the prequels,
I don't know why it took me this long.
Yeah, the Millennium Falcon, the Star Destroyer.
I was looking at the pattern, and I was like, "Oh, what an interesting pattern!" And then, like, as soon as I noticed Baby Yoda in the corner, I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, Baby Yoda, okay. Or Grogu, as he's formerly known.
Well, I know. Yeah. At first, I thought maybe those were your own sketches. I was like, "Wow." But
now the over here are my own sketches. So my degree, I went to the Art Institute of Atlanta, and I got a degree in animation, 3D animation, and that's another part of my story is the 3D animation and the artistic side. Done stuff for Discovery Channel and PBS, and through my uncle's animation studio before I had the marketing company. So these were some of the drawings I found in my portfolio that I thought, I'll put those up there. Something nice. Interesting.
So my question for you is, how have you seen Airtable used in kind of the freelancer community, the people you interact with? Is it something that is heavily adopted, or what's the?
So I think it could be. So I would say yes is in some ways, but not to the degree that I think it should be or could be. So I'm definitely like an ambassador for Airtable. Like if you are not using it or you haven't heard of it, and whenever I work with a new client, I have a template for project management. And so most clients I work with, I say, do you have a project management system? They probably say no. And if they don't, they said, we're going to set up an Airtable base and we're going to manage it through Airtable. So for me as a freelancer, I use it. Other freelancers, once they start to realize the power, then they start to get more and more on board. But there's I think one of the challenges with Airtable is it is kind of a build your own adventure. And so having templates and for the ones that they provide you, and then the Airtable universe, and I've got 3 templates in there that people can check out. That definitely helps with that kind of that starting point of like going from a blank canvas to something to work with. So I think that can be a barrier. A lot of people like tools that maybe do similar things, like a Monday.com or something that already has the structure implemented. Mm-hmm. But for those that kind of can get the value of it and realize, I think for me, one of the big points of value for Airtable is I can kind of build my own app without having to be a coder. And so I can do so many things from an operational standpoint, both for me and my customers, that I wouldn't be able to do without Airtable, or I would have to find some tool that might be able to do it. And I'm the type of person who can be the configurator to kind of work it out and build the frameworks. And so giving me that flexibility is a huge point of value for me. So,
cool.
Yeah.
What would be?
I imagine to be able to change things pretty quickly, yes. Because mm-hmm. to your point, you started off with a subset of workflows that you had in Sheets, and you moved them into Airtable, and then down the line you moved in something else, and had you built a very complete system in something that's more code reliant, or a pre-made sort of system, custom built for whatever your market share is, adding that other piece down the line would have been difficult in a couple of different ways. Whereas in Airtable, it's a different experience. It's not easy, but it's a different experience.
Yeah, and I was also sad too, like, because I used to use Trello, but as soon as when Airtable just pulled in the Kanban boards, it was like game over for Trello. And I love Trello, but it was like there's just not a reason to use it anymore, because the beauty of Airtable is you can look at the data in so many different ways, and it's really grown so much, and it grows so much faster in functionality than I can really keep up, because I'm not like strictly an Airtable consultant. I can't like always know what's going on, and I'm using it more as a tool for other things.
You're not watching our podcast every week?
Not enough. In fact, I've had to get to the point where I refer other Airtable specialists for these advanced projects, and it just is not the wheelhouse that I'm playing in, but I love it and will continue to use it and advocate for it. So
what so favorite feature and must have that you want them to add?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess just thinking about what I just said in terms of like there's so many things that are unraveling in terms of rolling out new functions. It would be cool if there was a way for so we have Airtable Universe, and you got those, and you have templates when you start. I don't know if there were like micro templates that I could install on an existing base. Like I just want to kind of build out this particular function, and I don't know if that kind of thing exists, but that would be one thing that comes to mind, is how make it easy for me to adapt some of these systems. Maybe it's the automation tool, or I've been playing with the interfaces. And I think the interface is actually a big game changer from when I first started using Airtable for visualizing data. That was always one of my, I guess, the obstacles I had with the dashboards I was making, is I didn't have a way to visualize it. Now with the interfaces that have been out, I don't know, 2 years. That's given me a chance to leverage that with both myself or some of my clients, and not have to use a separate system. So
nice.
Yeah. Does that answer the questions?
Yep.
I hit them all.
Yeah, that's a great call out too, in that Airtable has a lot of different resources for I'm starting from scratch. Give me something that is sort of pre-built, that's close to what I want. But if you've already started, and you just want one automation added to your system, you got to build it yourself and have two screens open and sort of look at someone else's screenshot, and then there's no easy way to sort of pull in pieces.
So copying and pasting like pieces of it would be nice. Yeah.
And to your point,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, to your point, for interfaces, they're great. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
If you start an interface in one base and want to do something very similar in a different base, good luck.
Yeah. Yep. And that I've seen some shifts in the interfaces just in terms of making it easier to create them. But that's, probably got more that they're doing. But like, here'd be just a practical example. I have like in one of my bases for my clients, I have a calendar function for their email marketing. And so I built that out, but it'd be nice if I could just copy that one piece into another one that I already have instead of doing all the stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. If you want to start sharing your screen, we'll move on to the next segment here. Let's go back to the screen.
So share screen
and so we're gonna check out some bases that you use in your world and how they work.
All right, let me know if you can. Okay, there we go. Cool.
All
right, so I want to just start with this because I do have 3 templates in the Airtable universe. This first one is the freelancing dashboard that I made, and so you can go in there, and if you're a freelancer, play with that. And I have, I actually, on this one, I have pretty good kind of instructions on how it works and documentation on it to help people. The second one is this system. It's called IDEMA. And IDEMA is this 5-phase process. So everything starts with an idea. So we ideate, capture the idea, we discover the idea, we execute the idea, we maintain the idea, and then we audit the idea. So it's these 5 stages. And this was actually born out of a desperate, when I had my marketing company, it was very chaotic. It's kind of like the Wild West with project management. And we'd bring in a project manager that was like really good and organized, but the chaos was just so much that they would leave. They're like, I can't handle the chaos anymore. So we kind of got to the point where like, okay, all these people are leaving. Maybe there's something wrong with us. We should figure it out. And being entrepreneurial and creative, that's just kind of how I was. But I wanted to figure out what was kind of the life cycle of every project. And so this is where the IDEMA came from. And so I have this kind of framework in my mind whenever I'm doing project management or I'm working with clients is, okay, how do we, capture the idea? How do we plan those ideas, execute them? And then how do we have visibility in a dashboard to be able to see those? So that's the second one. And then the third one is actually, it's how to find a job in the modern era. And it's really a template for people to kind of manage outreach. So when I think about when I shifted to freelancing, I kind of realized, some of the things I was doing was similar to like a job search. And so I kind of built a template to help people that were in that process, but I ended up going down the freelancing road. So, so that was one of the remnants of that. So I will start with my freelancing dashboard, just show a couple things. I've got a list of my clients here. And one of the things that I do is I have these different categories. As a freelancer, there's a lot going on just as an entrepreneur, creative, and we have to build our own structure. And so having these, I have a list of all my clients here. And this is my people tab, and I have different tabs for different things, but I want to just show 2 of the tabs today. But I order these clients. So I have 8 clients in this normal client. And then I have this day complete grouping, and I group them this way, and I do it in order. So I essentially work through my clients based on this order. So in terms of priority. And I do I do batches of 10 hours with my clients. And so I identify how many hours, I've been approved and invoiced, and then how many potential new hours that are on the horizon this month. And then it calculates that and tells me how many hours I need to work per day per client in order to finish those hours. And then I have an adjustment column that I can use. And then I have different columns for the status, so I can change the group. The invoice status, if they paid, if I invoiced them yet or not, do I invoice them before or after, what kind of thing, project. Then I have them all on another Airtable. So I have a link to their Airtable project management. And so now I can just easily access their Airtable with one click and go into their spot. So so I have all my clients here, and then I organize them in this priority. And so that way, if I have one that I have a client that's like important, I put them in the important column and it'll move it up. Or I have a client that's urgent, needs something right now, and then it'll go up. So I have a hierarchy that allows me to figure out what to focus on. And then I have the columns to figure out how much to do that. And so my focus metric is really time, like number of billable hours per day, per week, per month, per year. And so if I follow this column, I'm going to hit my goals, assuming I've got enough client work to do that. So the new one that I added is this thing called daily tracking here. And this is where I have, let's see, hide some of these real quick. So these columns, so I have, it's each day I put in, these different check marks here, and then how many hours. My goal is to log 4 hours and 20 minutes of billable time each day. And so I'm actually tracking that throughout each month, and I can see the pattern. So if I got four of the hours, and then have I gone over it? Have I gone extra hours? And sometimes I might work, in this case on the 11th, I did over 5 hours, 48 minutes. So I'm tracking this. And the reason I'm tracking it is I'm tracking it against my goals. So this month I've logged 40 hours, billable hours, and my goal is 43. So I'm at 93%. So I'm a little bit behind. So then I can adjust, today or tomorrow or this week, work a little bit extra to kind of make up the difference. But ideally I would be pretty consistent, but that doesn't always happen with being married, having 5 kids, and all the life things, getting injured, all kinds of things. So this is a cool system I built. This is the thing that I realized I kind of lost in my spreadsheet, was I didn't have a way to really motivate me on a daily basis in terms of really tracking how I was going throughout the day. If I'm halfway through the day, I need to make sure that I'm kind of pacing myself so that I can adjust for the second half of the day if I'm missing my mark.
Nice.
So any questions on that before I move the jump to the next one?
I don't think so, no. Yeah,
so I'll jump. This is a client of mine. This is the going back to this template. This is the IDEMA template. I've made some adjustments to it. But I take that IDEMA framework and then I create these micro stages within that. So all of these groupings here are within one of those areas. So you have the maintain up here and then the done. And so, these are maintain items. These are things I need to do on a regular basis. It might be, in this case, I don't have a pacing, but in some cases I might put, this is a weekly thing or a monthly thing, or trigger based. I have this done thing, and then I also have an archive column. And the reason I do that is so I put everything in the done when I'm done, but then I can report with my clients on what's been done, and then I'll archive it. So it kind of gives me a process for reporting. But I can go, here's the things I'm stuck on, here's the things that are active. And again, I order these hierarchically from top to bottom based on what to focus on. So I need to knock out the stuck thing before I work on the active things. So in this case, I need to figure out how to get access to the Facebook page for this client, but I'm stuck because they haven't provided that and they don't necessarily know. It's kind of a lost page. So we're trying to recover it. With active, these are things I'm currently working on, projects that I'm currently working on. And then in this case, I'm using Airtables recently. It's formatting to do a checklist inside of it. So I do like that. What I'm going to work on next, what are the top ideas that then follow that? I also have a templates here because these are tasks that I do every month for this client. So what I'll do is I'll just duplicate the record, and then it has my checklist inside of it of what to do. And then I'll move it up to one of these other stages. And then this is another big thing that I do on all my Airtables is I have an idea repository. So whenever I'm working with clients, they see opportunities for improvement, things we could do, or they have suggestions. And so we're just capturing all the ideas here. So we have a place and they don't get forgotten. So that's a big thing. couple other things I added on this space is I have an email tracking system. So we use MailChimp and help them run their campaigns. And so I put them all in here. One of the things I like about Airtable is the ability to both track data and then be able to look at it in different ways that might not be possible in the tool of which we're using. So in the case of MailChimp. So what I'll do is I can see I can put in the time I sent, the day, the time, AM, PM, number of cents, opens, clicks, what type of email it is. So this is the chronological view. And then I have a calendar view where I can actually, move things around this way and see where they are. And this is something I can share with the client so they know what's going out, when it's going out. And then I have this, I call it the stats slicing. And this is where I can sort or group by different factors in order to kind of get an idea of like what time is the best or what day. So, in this case, I can, pull up the day and go, okay, for the normal emails, it looks like these are not loading. I'm missing the data on that one. So it'll show me, what's the open rate and the click rate. So I can go, which day is the best? And I can actually identify that real quickly. Or I can also group by AM or PM and go, which, is it better to send in the morning or the afternoon? And I can get
do you give access to your clients, like read-only access? Are they in here? How much time do they spend in here?
So with this, I'm open to giving as much or as little access as a client wants. Most clients are going to be just read or commenting, not even commenting. I would say read is probably the most common. Some will do commenting. I've had some clients and some projects where will project manage together through the, we'll have a column here, which I've got hidden. I call it passengers. I'm working on this, so-and-so is working on that, and we can actually have different views for the different people. But what I've discovered is that most people don't necessarily do that. But I've had teams, often I'm managing a team of freelancers. And so sometimes there's like 3 or 4 of us working on the same client. And so we'll use Airtable together and I'll project manage and they'll participate. But for the most part, clients are pretty hands-off.
Hands-off. Gotcha.
So, but there is I think a big part of it is a reassurance factor. The fact that it's there and that they have access to it, it kind of just helps build trust.
Right.
And so that seems to be more valuable than actually them like reviewing things in it. Yeah. So it tends to be more for me. And then in some cases I have clients that they're so kind of like maybe just disordered or in chaos, that instead of even sending them to Airtable, I'll like send them an email with like kind of a summary of things and then a link to the Airtable if they want more details. So trying to translate it for them.
Makes sense.
So, this one is another thing I've been kind of experimenting with. This is another client. Some of the SEO stuff that I've been doing. I've got in this case, I've got all their pages listed in here, the URLs, and then I've got different columns for different things. But the big thing that I'm doing is SEO change tracking. So we might make a change to a page. So this might be, a title change or a content change. And so I've got a column for that. And then I have the created and updated, and then I started doing a change date column as well. So we have more precision. But from an SEO standpoint, we can change the title on a page. So we might change this page and I can look, I did that on March 31st. So this was almost 3 weeks ago. So now I can look on Google and see in the search console that they have or in our keyword tracking. And I can see after I made that change, what happened. And so this log lets me do that. And then it links back, this column links back to the pages. So I can also look at a page and go, okay, this page has had 3 changes. These are the 3 changes here. And there's 2 title changes, one URL change. And so then that's another thing that I'm doing just to see how the changes are affecting things, and then be able to either reverse course or see that it's a positive change. So does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. I think I heard that on the Startups for the Rest of Us podcast. I think they were talking about this strategy of keeping track of marketing log of changes.
Yeah. And so it makes it really easy. And then it's also value because of the ups and downs of whether the change makes a difference on Google. So I got one other base I could show you real quick.
We got a minute. Yeah, maybe a minute.
Okay. All right. So this is just a personal base. So me and two of my kids are going to Honduras this summer to serve the community in Agulta Valley. So we're actually doing a fundraiser to help raise for the service trip, and we're doing it through our church. And anyways, it's a lot of work to do to a lot of people that we're reaching out to. We're sending letters, we're emailing them, we're hand mailing some or snail mail. And then we also have like who's donated, so I have these different groupings, just to help me track like, okay, who have I sent, because there's like almost 300 people that I've reached out to. Who have I sent it? How have I sent it? How have they responded? Who's donated? Who's committed to donating? Am I on track? And so I use Airtable both personally and professionally. And I just wanted to give a quick example. I have a goals and plan, and then I have the people tab is really the main one I use for tracking, who's giving and what they're giving. And I went to Mexico last year, and I kind of built this system and used it again for this year. But me and my oldest daughter just went last time. But we were able to raise, within 2 weeks, we raised all the money we needed. We ended up raising a lot more, which helped some of the other teams members that weren't able to. So the system worked pretty good. And I would like to add, templatize this and add it into the Airtable universe in case anyone is there. But it's just a simple way to track what I'm doing and what on a personal level. So wanted to just mention that.
I hope that Airtable doesn't lose sight of that overlap between using it for your personal life and business. As they focus more on the enterprise, I hope they don't lose.
That's a good point. I do hope that as well, because as just a freelancer and a small guy who's not a big deal, obviously it's from a financial standpoint. That's kind of one of the things that's happened with HubSpot, unfortunately. I work with a lot of clients that use it and help them with their HubSpot systems, but they kind of made that shift towards enterprise and kind of left the rest of us to hang.
Yeah. So. Yeah, for sure. I'm sure I would imagine most people that use Airtable in their business world also find a use case for it in personal.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And a lot of people start with a personal use case and move it to their business.
Yeah. Good point.
Right.
Yeah, and I use it personally for other things like tracking our savings and giving and budget stuff. And so,
Nice. Awesome. So people can find you on your website, jasonscottmontoya.com.
Yeah, so jasonscottmontoya.com. If you type in, and if you're in the Airtable universe and you want to search for the templates, just type in my last name, Montoya. On my website, I've got tons of blogs on personal development, entrepreneurship, leading others. I've got a podcast called Share Life, Systems and Stories to Live Better and Work Smarter. And then I've got, everything's on jasonscottmontoya.com if you need or want to explore any of that.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on, showing it. I think it's safe to say that your business is very dependent on Airtable.
Yes. I couldn't do what I do without it. And hopefully I've made many Airtablers over the years to help them grow as well.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Okay. A quick shout out to join our community, and in particular, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to get that up to 1,000. We're in the pushing 800 range. So we're hoping to get to 1,000 here this year. So tell your friends, join us in the community, builtonair.com/join. That gets you into the Slack community where there's thousands of other Airtable fans conversing and whatnot. So we'd love to have you join us there. Let's move on to scripting time with Camille. Going to show us some cool scripting. Go for it.
So this is something that comes up, I think, a lot when you have a one or more columns that contain data, and it's easy to know when a value has changed because Airtable has a last modified by and last modified time field types that tell you when something changed, but it doesn't tell you what something changed from to what. So if you look at the activity log for any particular record, you can see this information here, but that's not really shareable to people outside of your base. Or if you want a weekly sort of email that lists out in plain English what things used to be and what they are now, it's sort of difficult to achieve. So I wrote a script that is pretty extensible that gives you an overview of how data changes from blank to blank. So I'm going to make a test and sure hope that the script hasn't broken since the last time I checked it. So I've just changed that date from the 27th to the 28th. After a couple seconds delay, I see Airtable is still saving. Yeah, so an automation will run and it will output that today's date is the 18th. So on the 18th, the field due date C went from the 27th to the 28th, which is a positive difference of 1 day. I'm going to stop here and preface that while I'm comfortable giving this base and script out to people, I'm not going to answer questions about it because the reason I built this was for my current position. There are two different teams that wanted effectively this, but they wanted this output in two different sort of formats. One of them wanted the number of days difference in parentheses, and the other one wanted it grouped by field and not by the date on which the values changed. That affects how the script is ultimately written, and everyone is going to want this sort of thing formatted slightly differently. So I'm going to give you what you see as is, and then
it's up to
that's
you
it.
to modify it.
It's up to you. You gotta. There's things in here like you'll see the text is bold here and italicized here. I'm not going to customize that for you. You're on your own. But what you don't see is this field that outputs a bunch of JSON again. We're back at JSON, where effectively I have an object where the key of that object is the day that the values were logged, and then its value is another object for each of my fields that I'm tracking, and then what the value is on that day, in this case the 15th. And then the second batch of dates is today, the 18th, when I changed the value from the 27th to the 28th. Now I'm logging the value for all of the fields that I'm tracking, not just the one that was changed. And the reason is if I want to go back and change the value of another field, let's make due date B the 5th, what I want it to do, I don't want changes made on the same day to be logged as like completely separate changes. I want them to be grouped by the day. And that's what happened here. You'll notice that date B came above due date C, and that has to do with how things are ordered in the script itself. So with that sort of all in here, I will note that the reason this isn't counting the way I want it to is because this is a different list type. This is sort of a defect in Airtable's Markdown. I think if I do that, yeah, that's the problem. It's not really a script thing. It's the chosen method of formatting, which again is why I'm not going to answer any questions about how this thing is ultimately written. But if I look at it, I'm going to start by going with a very simple, when a record is updated, I'm watching 3 fields. Then a script is run. I'm going to explain in plain English what the script is doing. I'm going to have to zoom out just a little bit in order to do that. I'm pulling in the record ID of the record that was just updated. I am pulling in the table. In this case, I only have one table. It's called projects. the JSON field. That is the long text field that you can almost certainly hide 100% of the time, that just lists all of the values on every date that a value possibly was changed. The summary field, that's the one that's formatted for people to actually read. And then the watched field IDs. In a perfect world, I would be able to say any field that is currently visible in this particular view. I can't do that in an automation script. But instead, what I'm doing is getting an array of different field names. Now, in practice, in the solutions that I've actually built, these are all IDs, the ID of the table, the ID of these different fields, just because that's more sustainable. If someone changes the name of any of these due dates fields, then the script will break. So if you're going to adapt this process, all you would do is, instead of putting in the name of the field, you put in the ID of the field, just as a warning. Then I'm getting the actual table itself, and I'm pulling in all the details about the record, not just the record ID. When I'm passing that, I only need to get the JSON field, the fields that I'm watching for changes, that's that array here, and then the summary field itself. So I'm not pulling in every single column that has to do with this record. Then I'm just getting for what is today's date, and I'm converting that date time into a string. Something I learned in version 2 of the thing that I built in practice. I want to make sure that a change is logged according to my time zone, which is America, Los Angeles, because if you make a change at like 5 p.m. my time, it gets logged as a change made tomorrow, when that's a little bit confusing when you're actually trying to get a running history of changes. Next thing, I am getting the value of all of the history for that record that's in that JSON field. I'm parsing it out. Right now it's just plain text, but I want it in true JSON to give it a workable object in JavaScript. From there, each key of that outer object is going to be the date that a change was logged, and then I'm building a new set of objects for what are the current values. So some value just changed because it triggered the automation. What are all of the values now? And I'm overwriting any log for today that's already in there. That's why I made a change to due date C, it logged the change. I then made a due date change for date B, it logged the change again, but it didn't show up as two different groups. It all came in under today, April 18th. I'm combining that together. What is my current history plus all of the values from today, making that one new object. And then this is the part where things get very specific to how you want things arranged. But generally speaking, I'm taking each day of history that I have, and then for each field on those days, I'm checking, does this value equal the same thing as the value from the next time the history is logged? If it's exactly the same, then I don't need a summary, nothing changed. If something is different, then do both of those values exist? If so, what is the difference in time? And then format it however this particular implementation wants it formatted. That's a nested bullet, that's why there's all these spaces, and then an asterisk. The name of the field went from blank to blank. Then I want to check if I have added, I'm going to back up and just give this as an example. Right now I'm checking 3 fields. If I want to suddenly track due date D, I can do that, but there's no history for due date B in any of this. So the next time I add a value to due date D, I don't want it to say it went from blank to whatever it is now, because it might not have actually been blank. I don't want to log that as a change. And that's what that last if statement is doing. It's saying, do you have history to compare for this field? If so, compare it. If you don't have history, then don't compare it. if I have history and it really was blank the last time I checked, then say it went from blank to this. Yeah. That is the explanation of this implementation. Again, I don't want to answer questions. I will if pressed. I don't want to answer questions.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, this is such a useful use case. Comes in handy quite a bit. So yeah, lots of things you could do. You could also log, like you were saying, if there is no history, then maybe you want to log that was the first entry, or, it was created or whatever, first set.
Yes.
So lots you could do with it.
That's something you could do, and you could do that pretty easily. But again, you get in and change the if statements and all that. And there's nothing that says that you have to log date field. You could do this with any field type. It's just that they particularly wanted to know the difference in days, and that only really applies for date fields. If you wanted to track text fields changing from when to when, or who was assigned to a task, but with a collaborator field, you could do that with this script as well, modifying the formatted text a little bit.
Yeah. And there is a limit, 100,000 characters to a long text field. So if you have a ton of history, then you might need to add some archiving or some removing older entries.
I would not advise tracking more than realistically more than 5 different fields in one implementation. You could chain these together and have multiple JSON and summary fields. And I wouldn't recommend doing this for fields that are literally constantly changing. It's more for the due date of an overall project. That's probably going to change, hopefully. I don't know your process. Hopefully only a couple of times. If it's constantly changing, then you're going to run into a barrier, and then you might want to log every change to its own record.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Camille, for sharing that. We'll put the link out, and we'll put a disclaimer. Do not contact Camille.
No, don't do it. Buyer beware.
Yep. Buyer beware. You gotta, if you're gonna start going into that world, you gotta be okay tinkering with the scripting, or like Jason said, throw it into ChatGPT and say, how do I change this to do what I want? Well, Jason, thank you again for coming on the show. Always appreciate it, and good luck with your trip to Honduras. And that's awesome. And
thank you very much, Dan.
Yep. And Camille, good to see you again. We will be back next week with a new episode. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our sponsor, ontoair.com. And we will see you next time on the Built on Air podcast.